most recent times, most of the factors are always prevailing. That is the precision, skill, creativity, etc. Knowledge always found everywhere. The learners can collect it, hunt it, feed, go through proper ways, or can inculcate, whatever may be. But to discuss about this topic, I initially like to thanks to our teachers, young teacher Somnath Roy, assistant professor and head education department, Supriyo Kunai, assistant professor in philosophy department. Along with, there are several teachers, our colleagues. They actually tell me that we are going to organize such a seminar, and there some resource persons I personally requesting Devoshi Banerjee, Sir Arindam Bose, and Muhammad Paji Ahmed Khan from Bangladesh, Professor Sivastava, and we agreed that very initially we are not able to conduct this in this type of technology-based platform, but we are now gradually increasing our practicized things, and our technical team actually help us. Most of all, I like to thank our sir, Arindam sir, and our next speaker also, Professor Devoshi Banerjee. You are most welcome in our college. Our college is very small but very promising. There are very enthusiastic teachers and our staff. They organize different things. We are especially waiting for you to listen something about. Sir, okay, you are most welcome. Somnath, please request her to say something about.
Hello, sir. Hello, Arindam sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you. Okay. Thank you, sir. Yeah, you can now enlighten your topic. Sure.
Thank you very much. Namaskar. I'm really delighted to see young.
প্রিন্সিপাল স্যার আপনার মাইক্রোফোনটা ইকো হচ্ছে। হ্যাঁ স্যার ঠিক আছে এবার আপনি।
All right. Yeah. Yes. I'm really delighted to get this invitation, especially from our young friends, young faculty members, Somnath and Supriyo, and I also see Pinky's name. Haven't met her, haven't seen her so far. It's really heartening that young generation is picking up the cudgels and probably going to see bright future ahead. Let me start presenting right away. Give me a moment, please. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes,
Somnath, can you please confirm?
Yes, sir.
I cannot make it into a presentation mode because then it doesn't work. So I'll keep it this way, and I hope it's visible. I can rather enlarge it. Yeah, this should work. All right. So the topic that I thought might be a bit relevant to all of you, in fact, for all of us in this pandemic situation, is to think a little more deeper in terms of leveraging technology space and reimagining teaching and research, what new media can offer to us in terms of connected learning. I'll talk about what I mean by connectedness. I really thank again, once again, for this opportunity to get connected with the education fraternity of South Bengal, and I would like to sometime visit your college as well. All right, so here's my outline for the talk. I would very quickly talk about, in fact, reflect on the current situation that we are all facing, have been put into quite suddenly, in an unprecedented way. And there are constraints which have emerged, which are in a way bringing to us very limiting situations that we are not able to do otherwise what we generally are able to do. But there are ways out, and how do we uh, take, leverage the affordances that technology offer to us by looking at learning spaces which are created by these affordances. And I call them connected learning spaces. And then I will quickly talk about reimagining pedagogy, particularly from learning and teaching viewpoints and meaning making processes, reimagining research, because I understand the seminar is being organized by the Department of Education, and I hope there would be several young researchers in education, and we perhaps need to think a little more deeply about what could be the ways, alternative methods to take on to in this situation, which is likely to continue for some time now. And then there are ethical concerns, which I'll talk about. Well, the situation that we are in, as I said, is not just unprecedented, but also unthought of. In our lifetimes, none of us who is present in this world currently has seen similar situation in the past. So we are really taken aback. We are really not very prepared for it, and we are slowly coming to terms. In fact, even now we seem to be not very prepared of tackling home confinement and tackling the limited ways in which to handle the situation, not just for our survival sake, but also for continuing our work, particularly research activities, teaching, learning processes, and so on. Now, the situation that we are into currently is not just a social event. You know, it's a it's more than a pandemic. It's actually a socio-cultural political event now, and there are reasons for that, and there are reasons why I'm claiming it to be a socio-political and cultural event. There are there are constraints which have come up in the last few months, which have been completely unprecedented. There have been instances of social causes, social worries, which are far more uh, uh, difficult and far more uh, badly coped, as was untouchability and so on in the past in our country. This current situation has also reinforced different socio-cultural relations in our society. It has unpacked inequalities, which are much more prevalent, different kinds of discrimination and divides. But on the positive note, the current situation has helped us galvanize collective social actions. And one such is this example of this webinar, that we are all coming together. This pandemic situation has really put some thrust on use of technology and bringing people together to ponder upon what ways to be chosen or picked up in days to come. Now, the constraints are putting our outdoor activities to a very limited scope, practically to null. So much so that it has severe impact on education research. It has severe impact on uh, teaching methodologies, teaching learning processes, pedagogy, and so on. It has reduced face-to-face interactions, reduced meetings, discussions, and so on. However, I claim in this talk that the online affordances, and one such is this example of us meeting in this platform currently, So these online affordances create increased access on the virtual space, which we were not u- using as much as we do right now. And therefore, the question that comes to our mind is what to do in this limiting situation. Just a moment, let me close the window because the rain is in Bombay, it's just pouring. All right. So what? Now, what could be our response to, such an ensuring effective pedagogy? Just to make sure that our pedagogic processes are even more effective and meaningful, and not just for the sake of doing it, not just for the sake of completion of syllabus, not just for the sake of marking an attendance, not just for the sake of showing that yes, we are holding online classes, but how to really, even in this situation, make the pedagogic practices really effective and meaningful. That's where the challenge lies. And how could we imagine our response to such an emerging scenario? The second point that I would like to invite you to think about is also to reimagining and replanning teaching and research inquiries. In this situation, in this limited scope, how can technology, or even for that matter, any other possibilities, can help us replan or find alternative ways of engaging into teaching activities with the same grit and same response and same energy as much as we used to do earlier. How can technology be used for reimagining education space to garner that impact which was meaningful? And therefore, the question that I'm trying to address here and want to provoke you to think as well is looking at new media. What can new media offer to us in terms of connected learning? How can schools come to those students, especially who cannot really go to schools? Is there a possibility of turning around that cycle? How can we bring schools to those children who have been deprived, disadvantaged, and cannot really pursue education further? I think this is also a time when we should think about it and think about the larger universalization of education in question. Well, before I move on, let me also talk about what I mean by connected learning. It's not just about be having holding a smartphone, having access to internet or a personal computer or a laptop for that matter, or iPad and so on, but connected in really in true sense of being in connection with the peers and probably with the mentors. And that goes true with not just for students but also teachers, educators, researchers like us, where we are connected with each other, not just in terms of saying hi, hello, and meeting, but really in terms of pedagogic practices, where sharing happens using technology as a platform and means, and sharing of ideas and sharing of resources happen through such channels. That's where connectedness will have its full, will actually fulfill its meaning. And when we talk about connected learning, it's not just making connections through these gadgets, but really making learning happen or teaching happen through the connected means. And I will come to that in some of the later slides when I'll show you about the, the open education resource, some of which we in TISS have prepared. Well, one of the possibilities is digital teaching and digital research, which we are currently engaged in. And so one of the affordances or scope for innovation is to look at the classroom space, in the online space particularly, as a new field of research. Obviously, in the limited scope that we are not able to really go and visit and sit in the physical classroom spaces which used to happen before, and therefore different research methodologies, particularly those coming from the qualitative domain, say ethnography, say focus group discussions, or classroom observation in that sense, are bound to be affected or cannot happen right now. However, the online classroom space is opening up huge possibilities for research, you know, where, because these days, for example, look at this platform as a classroom space. Imagine that someone is, holding a lecture, teaching, and this entire session is being recorded. There are many ways in which analysis of, say, lesson plan, analysis from the view of teacher professional development, analysis from, say, multilingual perspective, discourse analysis, and so on and so forth, students' misconceptions, learning from errors, and huge possibilities can emerge. As much as we used to do before can also be done even now in this constrained situation by looking at the classroom space, online classroom space, as a new field of research. Similarly, there is, some of us, us in TISS, and also in some states where we work, like Telangana, Chhattisgarh, Mizoram, and Rajasthan, where we have developed, we work with teachers and carry out some teacher professional development activities, workshops, in particularly in a few government schools in rural parts of these states, like in Dhamtari district of Chhattisgarh, in Karimnagar, Warangal, and Rangareddy districts of Telangana, in Aizawl and Lengpui districts of Mizoram, and in Jaipur and Alwar districts of Rajasthan. And so what happens is we have created communities of practice. Well, this is a terminology generally used by Jean Lave and Etienne Wenger, where the practitioners of the field form a community. So communities of practitioners of the field and those of the teachers. And there are many such online groups. We use Telegram as an app, which functions like WhatsApp. And there are group Telegram, because it's an open source. It's not proprietary, but open source software. And we promote open source, softwares and open source resources. So now these Telegram groups, we have, in fact, in the Telangana Telegram group, we have more than 400 teachers of mathematics alone. Similarly for science and English and so on, where not just teachers, but also educational experts, resource persons, people from the SCRT, diets, and other educational institutions are part of. Imagine the kinds of knowledge exchange that happens, the kind of connectedness, as I was speaking about, happens. So these are some of the possibilities, and we are not running this now. In fact, this has been going on for the past 5 years, since 2015, and now is the time when we are uh, really realizing how important these communities of practice have become, particularly in this constrained situation. So therefore, there are possibilities, but we must ensure quality and their efficacy. That's where the challenge is. Let's move on. Now, the challenge is also to identify technology affordances. What wasn't possible earlier may be possible now. However, as I said, quality will be of question. Well, I just now spoke about reimagining teacher space, like digital COPs, communities of practice, or digital PD spaces, professional development spaces, which incorporates within themselves different levels of nature of support, exchange, planning for lessons. Also, it has huge possibility of employing data science methodology for analyzing, for example, analyzing chat messages, analyzing different posts which go. In fact, there have been, these new facets in qualitative research, particularly coming from PD background, analyzing the chats, analyzing. In fact, this is a new body of research which is emerging, particularly in the Western world and also in Southeast Asia. People are really interested to know how connectedness really, is used or leveraged for impacting classroom practice. All right. So therefore, employing data science, digital methods for platform data, because now there are different kinds of platform, not just for teachers, but also for students, different learning management systems, LMS, and through which different online modules, digital modules can be used, which students are used, and at the back end, these data are captured. Now, it's very easy, and it will be very interesting to also see how students are making sense. For example, if I talk about mathematical reasoning, it will be really interesting to see how students are using, say, a geometric reasoning problem by doing some deductions, and what are the steps that students are employing. It's quite visible because at the back end, these data, the clicks that you are making or the students are making, are being recorded, and the sequence of such clicks can actually tell what kind of logic the person, the user, is using. Is the user getting or developing the skills better? Is it really helping, and so on? And one such example is the Connected Learning Initiative. I will talk a little bit about it soon. And therefore, digital research is actually lies at the interface of every branch of educational research now. And the point is how better to use it. Now, towards interactive pedagogy, this digital research can offer continued support through different COPs. I just spoke about one possibility of one group, but imagine there are several COPs within a college or within a school based over mobile apps or direct interactions. And imagine how much connected we will remain, not just connected, but also interactions, academic interactions that can happen. Increased engagement in COPs and content discussion with peers and resource teams can also become sustainable models. And one such example is the Connected Learning Initiative, CLICS implementation. And therefore, as I was saying, I just continue again. I reimagine that teacher education space using the technology affordances can not just lead to these kinds of connected spaces, but can also lead to different kinds of online courses, short-term courses, PD supports, online resources, digital libraries, and so on. And which we have to use right now. For example, there's no way that you can visit National Library Calcutta or you visit other libraries in your city. There has to be some ways to access library in a digital form, so that sitting at home, we and our students can still continue and be productive as used to be before. Let us look at this slide. This is about our CLICS project of Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Here, this is the website, clics.tiss.edu. And here is the website for CLICS Open Education Resources, OERs. These are free in the sense, of course, free that it incurs no amount of money. It's free of cost, but it's also free in the sense that it is freely available for anybody to make any change, free for freedom, that sense. So one can use it, one can modify it and so on, but you need to acknowledge. And we strongly believe in open educational resource, which should be access free, should be available to anybody and everybody, anywhere, any part of the world. And so here, if you please note it down, if you may use it later on. And in the e-library, you will find different modules, student modules, particularly for secondary students, grade 8, 9, and 10, for geometric reasoning, for linear algebra, for proportional reasoning in mathematics, and similarly for science, including astronomy, which is generally not taught, generally is not part of our science curriculum in our country. That apart, we also have, teacher handbook, student handbook, and so on, and guidebooks for teacher pedagogy and so on. So within the CLICS platform, we use teacher professional development using our own platform, which is TISX. It's an open edX platform, and through which we promote and we share and discuss through communities of practice. And there is also clicks for students. Well, now, right now, this model, I mean, this classroom space or computer lab scenario doesn't work. But imagine that this replicates among different households. Of course, access will remain a challenge, is a challenge. Now, reimagining TPD spaces, I have spoken about it, but in a summary in this slide, I just present before you once again that it has really sustained support on the content understanding and pedagogy, access to device and internet to teachers to explore ICT-based tools, participation of experts like SCRT, faculty principals, diet faculty, or even state education department officials and so on, who are part of COPs, and they develop shared understanding of for example, sharing of implementation challenges. Not that everything that I speak of or we discuss about is very easy to implement. There are hiccups, there are challenges, but there is a need to overcome those, using connected channels. Then lesson study, content clarification, showcasing best practices, and so on. Practice-based videos and other artifacts can also be used for study later on as exemplar practices, you know, and ICT for exploring and deeper engagement with the content matter, capacity development of local pools of teachers, developing mentor teachers, and so on. So these are the possibilities which emerge from digital resource, particularly. Now let's come to the education research part. How can in this current scenario we reimagine our education research? And I will be voicing for qualitative research particularly, because in India there has been emphasis and more work compared to qualitative research on quantitative research, statistical analysis and so on. However, there are people and there are groups which are working on qualitative as well, but I think there is need to catch up on this front as well. Compared to what I see in Brazil, there is a huge chunk of research output focused on qualitative research. And they are quite, I think I should not say weak, but they are yet to catch up on the quantitative part. What we at the most get to see is the mixed method, of using both quantitative as well as qualitative. But I think we in India, we education researchers have a plenty of possibilities of picking up on qualitative research. And why qualitative research? Because it helps us to capture and understand the meaning making processes, the sense, the underlying reading between the lines, reading between the mind, and so on. And therefore, it helps us to explain and address and plan for corrective measures in a better way compared to quantitative methods, which is more of which sort of labels everyone in the same color, right? Qualitative inquiries also help us capture social interactions, implications, reasoning for certain kinds of behavior and practices. It helps us to capture effective measures, which are otherwise missed by many quantitative methodologies. Therefore, qualitative inquiry helps us to go beyond the what question and helps us to answer the how part of it. And it helps us to explore and embrace different viewpoints, different perspectives, different meanings, different motivations, and so on. Qualitative inquiry in educational research can involve different classroom scenarios, which cannot always be captured by questionnaire, cannot always be captured by survey methods. There is a need to also focus on, effective parameters, like teachers' beliefs, like teachers' attitudes, teachers' noticing, or students' questions, missed opportunities, nature of students' questions. All these can be captured only when we sit back and look or go through the classroom videos post factum, right? Because this has, these things, teachers' abilities, teachers' beliefs, missed opportunities. अरे यही प्रश्न करते पढ़ता हूँ, ये कर सकते थे, ये तो भूल ही गए, नहीं कर पाए. These kinds of things, these kinds of afterthoughts have a huge impact, and that's what we observed in the field in Dhamtari in Chhattisgarh. Tremendous, almost like from absolute disenchantment to really becoming flag bearer, of some of these practices. We have some such success stories from teachers, in absolutely rural areas of Dhamtari district in Chhattisgarh. Unexpected consequences, surprise outcomes, which we just miss if someone is not there to point it out. But now, because we have classroom videos, because the classrooms are online, there's high possibility of recording these and also to look at them later on, post facto, and looking for such consequences, such surprises, such missed opportunities, which can only be analyzed using qualitative inquiry methods. Behavioral changes, understanding equity, understanding access, understanding foregrounds vis-a-vis backgrounds of a community or children coming from a particular community. How do these factors influence learning or impact on learning, can also be used or explored through qualitative methods, and some of which are mentioned in Oles Cosmosi's papers. I have followed much of his work in my work in this citation. Let me give you a quick example to point it out exactly what I mean by factors, beliefs, attitudes. Here is an example of I'll make the story very short. A fifth grader who came to me to understand division, because he felt that he was making errors while doing division, while computing, and he needed it because he worked in a micro enterprise to support his family, but not just to support his family, but also because it's seen as an important endeavor, like funds of knowledge resource which is available in the community and which community valorizes, and pseudonym, chadonam, say Abdul came to me and said in Urdu, sir aap mujhe taksim sikhayenge, can you teach me division? I said, okay, आपने तो सीखा होगा, तुम निश्चित में जानो, you must have learned it in school. Yes, मैं जब भी बनाता हूँ ना सर, गलत हो जाता है. So here is an example where the child was realizing that he was making mistakes and he wanted to fix it because he was distributing wages to children younger to him. He himself was only 11 years old, 11 বছরের ছেলে, and he was distributing amounts of money to children younger than him. And therefore, an error for Abdul was loss of income, which he cannot afford. Therefore, he had to fix it. He had to learn it. So he came to me, and I was doing some diagnostic testings, and then I gave him this task, 981 divided by 9. He did like this. And I say it in Hindi, Urdu, and then I will translate as well. Now I come now, he puts a 0. So 9 ones are 9. He puts a 0 here, then brings 8 down, 1 down, because he felt 8 is not divisible by 9. And now here is a catch, because in mathematics, the multiplication tables that we teach often start with 1.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Please present your screen. We cannot see.
Is it?
The presentation is off now.
Is it? Are you able to see now? No?
No, sir.
Now visible, now visible.
Now visible, sir. Now visible. Thank you, sir.
I have a request to the organizers. Please ask the participants to stop presenting. Somebody entered right now and started presenting. That is why we had to go out.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's visible. Okay. So one of the problems is that we always start multiplicative tables, the mnemonic tables, starting with 1. So which actually means that, for example, like here, 9 ones are 9, right? But if we teach them that 9 zeros is 0, then this problem would not come actually. This place value error. Here, Abdul thought 8 is not divisible by 9, therefore he put down 1 here. And he forgot that he had to put a 0 here. And then he wrote 9 nines are 81. Here, he has overwritten, he put 0 later on. Initially, he had written 9 here. So he got 19 as an answer. But coming from coming from an experience of work practice, Abdul immediately realized that there was an error, and he stopped and he started chewing his pencil. I, as a researcher, educational researcher, I understood that there was a cognitive conflict, cognitive dissonance in his mind, you know. And to arouse that further, I said, "Chalo beta, agla sawal." I knew he would stop me, and he did. He said, "Ruko na sir." I said, "What happened?" Sir, देखो ना गलत आया. नहीं, he didn't say galat. I think देखो ना आंसर नहीं आया. I said something like that. He said. I said, yes, आया ना. You got the answer. You got 19. Sir, वही तो बोल रहा हूँ. That's what I'm saying. Teacher ने जैसा बताया बरोबर वैसा ही किया, sir. So whatever teacher has taught me as teacher's method, I've actually followed teacher's method, you know, to the line, to the word, to the letter. But I don't get it. And to confuse him even more, to provoke him even more, I kept on saying, but you have got it. You have got some answer, isn't it? Then he got very frustrated and he said, oh ho sir, मान लो 981 रुपए हैं और 9 बच्चा है, कम से कम 100 तो मिलेगा ना सर. So he said, imagine there were 981 rupees to be distributed among 9 children. Each child would get at least 100. So here, look, a grade 5 student, 11 years old, he knows the possible range of the answer, which many middle class children would not have. Why can't we bring this resource to the classroom? And how to do that is the question. You see, if you do a survey method, probably Abdul would write 19 and we will just mark, well, Abdul ko maths nahi aata. Or children like Abdul who cannot write, and I guarantee this, and I say this with full confidence from my data, 50% of the data, the sample, could not write a 5-digit number or a 6-digit number correctly. But you ask them, for example, you give me any 5-digit number, say 13,206, 13206. A child, 50% of the children could not write this in the way we wanted them to write, the standard decimal method. But you ask them to take out or give 13,206 rupees from a box of lots of currency notes and coins, they will exactly take out that much amount of money. Which means what? Which means they have numeracy knowledge. He or she knows how much is 13,206. So what if he cannot write in the standard procedure that we want them to write in? This is an imposed knowledge, isn't it? And then we say numeracy is flawed. Children like Abdul are failed and they are forced to drop out of the system. Well, I'm not getting into there, but I'm just trying to tell you here in this presentation that qualitative method helps us to really go there and find out. Had I not been using qualitative method here, I would not have understood. I would have always thought Abdul ko maths nahi aata, Abdul ko division nahi aata. Then he said, oh, yahan 0 baithega. A 0 should come here. Because he calculated mentally. And he put a 0 and then put 9. And then I asked him, so what do you think? Which one is correct? 109 is correct or 19 is correct? Because he had full faith on his teacher's method. Of course, he was making a place value error, but he thought he was following teacher's method. ও ভাবছিল টিচার যেভাবে শিখিয়েছেন ও তাই করছে এবং অগাধ বিশ্বাস কাজেই টিচার্স তো ভুল হতেই পারেন না. Teachers cannot be wrong. So for him to actually accept that 19 was incorrect was very difficult. And you know what he finally said? He said 19 is correct here. 19 school है correct and 109 बाहर है correct. 109 बाहर सही है, 19 यहाँ सही है. There, so this is really very difficult situation. In fact, it raises so many questions, that we have failed to actually bring knowledge together, combine out of school knowledge with school knowledge and so on and so forth, which practically every school curricular document says. America's NCTM says this, Sweden's document says this, Finland's school curriculum framework says this, India's, of course, Singapore, Korea, go anywhere. Every curricular document will say learning is enriched if child's outside knowledge and school learning are brought together. And we are failing in this. Anyway, so let's proceed because I don't have much time left. And therefore, we need to reimagine different methodologies. And I spoke about digital method. The other possibilities in this pandemic situation, which we can do sitting at home, is a desk review, documentary review research. For example, say history of education, or other kinds of even curricular documents, textbook analysis, and so on. So desk reviews, and desk reviews are becoming immensely popular in many countries. Also reflective ethnography, multilingual discourse analysis, and this possibility has emerged even now, even further now, because ours is a multilingual country. In fact, look at my scenario, my situation. I grew up in Bihar in a scenario surrounded by speaking population. It was Bangla at home, Hindi outside, and English, and not just Hindi. It was under the sub language of Hindi. It was Magadhi, which is Magahi and Bhojpuri in Patna. And in English, it was Khari Hindi, the standard Hindi, and English. So, in fact, I was bombarded with at least 4 languages at the same time. I remember learning 3 languages simultaneously. And this is the essence of Indian population. But we hardly build on this. We hardly build on our language repertoire as a resource. Language can always be seen as a problem. In many countries, multilingualism is seen as a problem. Language can always be seen as a right. It is my right to be taught in mother tongue or whatever language I want to be taught in, like South Africa. They have 11 official languages, and the child has a right officially, well, nobody follows, but a child has a right to ask to be taught in the language that the child wants to be taught in. I had no scope in Patna to learn in Bengal. Of course, there was Bangla medium schools, but I always had to learn in English and in Hindi, and Bangla was only restricted in at home. So discourse analysis, multilingualism, and analysis in multilingual domains is a possibility which one can actually do sitting at home, even in this pandemic situation. So I don't have much time left. I can leave the presentations with you and have some questions later on. I will quickly scan through the slides. I think I have covered most of them.
You can carry on, Dr. Bose. You can
Can I
carry
carry
on. Yeah, of course, sure. Sure. I don't have much to present, so you can carry on. Don't worry.
All right. So in that documentary research, which I'm calling as desk reviews, analysis and review of documents can be used as data sets. And this can not, for example, say history of mathematics education. Bengal, for example, has a long history. Bengal, so is Madras presidency and Bombay presidency. They have long history of textbooks. For example, Chakraborty's Patigonit, right? And how has Chakraborty's Patigonit, which was used for several generations till independence, even after that, even after independence, suddenly switch over to many newer forms of textbooks. How was the curriculum revised? What was used as a framework, as a tool to do that revision? Of course, this did not happen overnight. But believe me, there is no research in this area. Practically zero. I was recently trying to write a book chapter, in fact, to contribute in a handbook of South Asian histories of education research. I actually failed to dig up anything from Bengal. History of mathematics education, history of science education, history of language education. In fact, history of education research in any domain of school education. Nay, absolutely nay. And I think this is the time when we should be really sitting back and reflecting on these. There could be different data sources. There are online archives. I got, in fact, Chakraborty's Patigonit online. Shubhankuri, those Namta, Sher Kosha. How beautiful that was. And we don't use them anymore in mathematics. I'm sure many of you may know Sher Kosha, many of you may not even know Sher Kosha. And it will be a very good task, even if you don't belong to mathematics background. It's really an asset, I would say, that we had. And similarly, there are Tinnai in Tamil literature. So what I'm saying is there are online archives which can be really dug up, by some groups, some students, and we need to, make such groups in our country. Say in Bengal, there should be a group which focuses on history of education research. There should be a group which focuses on, say, professional development and so on. Why can't we have these groups in India? And this is one of the contrasts which I see in Brazil or elsewhere. There are groups, and if you are interested in doing research in that, you contact that group, you go there. And what is happening here is almost like a khichdi thing. Everybody is doing everything and so on, and we end up actually making no impact. There are many good professors with huge research output, but then ultimately we are not able to make that impact on the field, which is necessary. And I think this is possible now. Competitive analysis of educational policy documents. Like, for example, say these days there is enough funding available for the BRICS nations, you know, and there has absolutely been no comparative analysis of the education policy documents or planning or curriculum or textbooks and so on. So the methods that one can employ is content analysis, thematic analysis, narrative analysis, discourse analysis, and so on. The other possibility is reflective ethnography, like autoethnography, field notes, reflective field notes, research on foregrounds, students' foreground vis-a-vis background. Students generally, particularly people coming from disadvantaged communities, low-income families, often have, because the setup is such that the role models are often uh, anybody who is seen to be successful in that community. All right, so a young child like Abdul was very happy. I had once asked him, what does he want to become? He said, sir, Seth banna chahunga. Seth means a person who owns a tailoring shop in Dharavi, in Bombay. একজন যার একটা ছোট্ট টেলারিং এর দোকান আছে, কারখানা, and where he can employ 4 or 5 people. And look at the level of aspiration. Abdul will be happy with that. And that's where the foregrounds are limiting, progress. And there has been much of research by Oles Cosmos, as I mentioned, on foreground research. Reflective narrative writings and sketches, which these are possibilities which one can think about. Discourse analysis, I have already spoken about it, like classroom interaction during online learning. Transition, like in India, it is very, very common. For me, it was very common because I constantly switched between Hindi, English, and Bangla. And code switching, these are called code switching, switching between different languages, transition between different languages. When does that happen? Why does that happen? For what purpose? How? Can it really inform classroom practice? Can teachers, say for example, a mathematics teacher or a science teacher or a history teacher, can, in what way transition or switching between languages can be used to impart pedagogy in an effective manner? And often this works. There is evidence that multilingual or even bilingual teaching is much more effective than monolingual teaching, because students bring in different registers. And therefore, it's very important that we understand the processes involved in meaning-making processes, using discourse analysis. So these are the possibilities which are possible, even sitting at home, even in this pandemic situation, even while we're not able to go out and do our field work. This itself is our field. Well, empowering theories. I think we in India, as educational researchers, we need to now build theories. We have been for long using different theories, and now we need to build theories and need to see what these theories can empower us to see, say, or do. These theories should emerge from meaningful use of technology as an affordance, and also from best practices in the classrooms. So I would rather be happy to envisage newer theories, empowering research, which makes an advancement in the knowledge domain, in knowing and learning, and so on. Well, there are ethical concerns that we need to keep in mind, because because subjectivity and objectivity is always a challenge, particularly in qualitative research, that we need to keep a distance between. We have to be aware and constantly think about the digital divide, the access issue, the equity issue, social justice concerns, but this, but not to stop from using technology and affordances of technology because there are groups which are denied, you know. But we need to create a field which is equal playing field, you know, for every participant, and keeping intact and maintaining high moral grounds. A short list of references here. Scosmos, if you type in Google Scholar, you will get lots of plenty of research on foregrounds. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing now. I will be open to some questions and discussions, if time permit.
Yes, sir. Uh, if you, if all the participants have any question, they can share with us. Hello. Hello. Any question? Hello. All the participants say that it is a nice and present, wonderful presentation, sir.
Sir, your mic is off.
If I am if I've not provoked enough to for people to ask questions, then it's of no use. You know,
Uh,
such good
I-
good presentations are everywhere.
Actually, I believe people are taking some time to digest the new information and come to questions. I'm sure about that.
Oh, crystal clear, Harishankar Mohote. Thank you. But I hope I have provoked you enough. I think it's important in India that we really think about, you know, forming groups, research groups, and in one place. For example, if Debushree group is working on teacher education, so let's look forward to that and create a bigger group. If I am working in, say, technology or multilingualism, there should be a group, and together, some of us should establish this in a way that in on the international platform we get recognition and people look forward to us, you know, because often when I go abroad, and Debushree would agree with me, we get to hear that you know, we get to hear so little from India. Why don't you write? You know, সব জায়গায় শুনতে হয়.
Exactly. Knowledge sharing has to take place actually. We are two watertight compartments. People are not at all aware of what's taking place here. That's true. I agree with you totally. Yes. People are
Sorry, sir.
mesmerized actually.
We learn how a researcher can continue their work in this pandemic situation, and teacher and student can transmit their experience to themselves. We learn a lot of things from you, sir. You enrich us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Shumna. So I stop here.
Thanks a lot, sir. Now we are inviting our next resource person, my guru, Professor Debussy Banerjee, Calcutta University, Department of Education. It is my great opportunity to meet, to take her in our today's webinar. Professor Debussy Banerjee is a well-known academician in the field of education. Professor Banerjee has vast and enriched experience and traveling and delivering lecture to different prestigious university and institute of education of different strata across India. She, she started her teaching career for Rani Birla College in 1993 and later in 1996 she joined Gokhale Memorial College. Then in the year of 2001 she joined Kolkata University, a very popular figure among her students since in the beginning of his career as a teacher. Under the supervision of Professor Debashree Banerjee, 20 MPhil and 12 scholars had completed their work. She is not only a teacher to her students, but also their guide and mentor. Whatever I say today, it will be too small or less to explain her. Ma'am,
Good evening, everybody. It's always a student who keeps praising the teacher. So two good words were said about me. So, but before coming to my lecture, I would just like to thank the authority for inviting me over here. And it's always a pleasure and a pride to visit a student's college when a student is an organizer over there. So it's my privilege to be a part of this webinar today. And after Dr. Bose's wonderful presentation, uh, it's a little bit. I'm feeling a bit shaky, but I'll just discuss on some other dimensions, the different challenges that we are really going through. I'll just take a minute to go through my presentation. Is my screen visible?
yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, it's opening. It's very slow. It seems. Okay. Uh, Actually, this post-pandemic era, it has opened up new avenues as well as challenges for us. Just I'll just take a second. I don't know why it's not moving. Okay. And when we are talking about modern era and the challenges, I would like to look at the challenges from two dimensions. One is the new normal, and the other is the new education policy. And actually, the new normal has led way to significant changes in the education system.
Hello. I think there is some problem. We can we are waiting for some time.
একটু ধরো বলছে সোমনাথ, is there any problem?
স্যার
Hello,
একটু প্রবলেম হচ্ছে, আমি হ্যালো স্যার, শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
I think there is a problem. হ্যাঁ আমি শুনতে পাচ্ছি,
হ্যালো,
কিছু প্রবলেম হচ্ছে মনে হয় ম্যাডামের, না?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, আমি
হ্যালো,
দেখছি স্যার। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ স্যার, আমি দেখছি।
ও মনে হয় কিছু প্রবলেম হচ্ছে।
হ্যাঁ স্যার, হ্যাঁ স্যার। হ্যালো হ্যালো, সুপ্রিয়,
Yes.
শুনতে পাচ্ছ তো? আমি দেখছি।
সুপ্রিয় ম্যাডামের সঙ্গে কন্ট্যাক্ট করা গেছে?
হ্যাঁ কল করছি। Yes, sir.
হ্যাঁ স্যার, আমি ফোন করেছি, উনি মানে ডিসকানেক্ট। হ্যালো হ্যালো স্যার, হ্যালো।
I'm facing some technical issues.
হ্যাঁ
হ্যাঁ ওই টেকনিক্যাল কিছু প্রবলেম হয়েছে আর কি। ম্যাডামকে আবার রিকানেক্ট করতে বলো, তাহলে হয়ে যাবে আমার মনে হয়।
হ্যাঁ স্যার, আমি রিকানেক্ট করতে বলেছি। আমি কথা বলেছি, কিছুক্ষণের মধ্যেই উনি কানেক্ট করছেন। একটু প্রবলেম হয়েছে, উনি ডিসকানেক্ট হয়ে গেছিলেন, বুঝতে পারেননি, আমি বলেছি।
Hello, am I there?
ওকে ম্যাডাম, চলে যাচ্ছেন।
ইয়েস ম্যাম, ইয়েস ম্যাম।
Okay, I'm so sorry. I
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে ম্যাডাম, ওটা
It's okay, man.
I'll just start
ঠিক আছে
again.
ম্যাডাম। ওকে
Is my screen visible now?
ইয়েস ম্যাম, ইয়েস ম্যাম।
Okay, okay. I don't know from where was I out. Did you all see this? The challenges of modern era? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello?
No,
Okay. Did
we
you
did
all
not see
this?
this.
Okay. So right from the beginning only I was out. Okay, I was just trying to say that in the modern era, I would like to look at the challenges from two dimensions. One is the post-COVID era, the new normal situation, and the other is a new education policy. And this new education policy is just a continuation. Actually, it had, the draft had come over in 2019. We all know that. But with this changing scenario, it was realized that we'll have to rethink about the education system, the total pattern of education. And the present, the new normal condition has raised certain questions in us. Like there's so much of uncertainty all over, the social uncertainty, the uncertainty in the educational field, the economic uncertainty. So we have to move on. We can't just stick to this. And then we have come to with a new term, social distancing. And well, I don't know how far that is possible in India. It is more of physical distancing that we'll have to learn to maintain because we are so used to, sticking to people around. And as Dr. Bose was saying, that the untouchability is coming back in a different form, where we are laying too much of emphasis on cleanliness and sanitization because we are always scared that maybe the person beside me or the person who had just visited that room has maybe a carrier, and we may just get COVID anytime anyway. So, uh, we are rethinking about it, rethinking about cleanliness. And another challenge right now is the economic, political, and social impact of COVID. The economic impact, we all know how many people have lost their jobs. People in very good positions had to give up their jobs because of economic downfall. And the political fights between the countries regarding who is managing it properly and who is not. And all these are having an impact on the society, on the social, uh, the whole society is still very scared. And now what happens is education becomes not only secondary, it's becoming a tertiary factor, which is not really that important to people. But we really can't stop. So teaching and learning, because see, education is the backbone of a country. Until and unless we carry on with it, we cannot uh, lift up the country from its present condition, the present economic condition. So the teaching learning methodology that we can see has changed so much. And as I was just saying that though technology has come into education over the last decade, but at least in the eastern part of India, we were not very comfortable with this online, teaching learning process. But now we have been forced to accept it and learn it, and be successful at carrying on with the process of teaching learning to this. I believe that is good in a way. One of the positive sides of maybe COVID, which has made us more techno savvy. And now the new education policy, which we'll find has been bringing about lots of changes in the total concept of education, concept of formal education. And maybe there are certain things in the policy which are nothing but, old wine in the new bottle. But whatever it is, right now in the present scenario, this has become quite a challenge for us because we are seeing that the whole education system is becoming dependent on uh, the technology. And we are talking about digital library, and we are talking about the courses that's going to take place online. And if we just look at the positive side of it, as Professor Bose stated right now, what about the school going down to the student who cannot come to the school? So I believe that is a good point about this new education policy. And yesterday we did hear Professor Srivastav talking about the different aspects of it. So I won't go to it from that angle. I will just give a brief outline about especially the schools and colleges, the higher education dimension, where we find that there has been a great change from the 10 plus 2 to the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 system. And now it is expected that the children will come to school at the age of 3. Now, that may be something quite common in the cities, but that has not been a common factor in the suburbs or at the rural areas. So we have to again think about how. So that is becoming a challenge, because how to deal with children from that age, and especially in India, especially in West Bengal, where the teacher-student ratio is pretty uh, challenging, where you have maybe one teacher for a primary class of, say, 70 students. How to tackle children right from the age of 3, the preparatory and the middle and the secondary schooling. So we have to rethink about it. We have to rethink about how we can make best use of the new policy. See, we cannot run away from it. We'll have to accept it. And the multi streams that's being asked to be offered, and the examination system, the traditional examination system, is going to be diluted in the form that marks won't really carry much meaning. See, all these were being discussed over the years. How far the marks are really good enough to judge a person as being knowledgeable and not knowledgeable. Just now, when we were talking about research methodology, like how far only quantitative research can really suffice for it. Qualitative research has certain very basic things, some certain good points to look into. Similarly, I believe it's good in a way when we are going to have evaluation, which will really not give much emphasis on the marks, and it's going to be grades. And multilinguality, of course, in India, we cannot deny that we'll have to be multilingual. And whether we are doing it formally or uh, informally, multilingualism will come in. But the challenge is, what will be the mode of instruction in the schools? It's not just Hindi and Bengali and English or maybe Marathi, but think of those areas which are in the uh, which are in, say, the tribal areas. They have a different dialect for that totally. So it is very challenging. It's going to be very challenging for the teachers to rethink and rearrange their education according to the new education policy. And bagless days are always welcome, and it's not at all a challenge, in the sense that it's going to be a welcome move. But think of the colleges. They, it has been proposed that a national testing agency will be there to conduct the common college exam. Well, it's good in a way, because the whole country is going to come through a normal screening that takes place in the Western countries. As far as I know, in USA they have the GRE, where students are selected based on the ranking out there. But again, the challenge is, we are talking about autonomy. We are talking about having their own ideologies, and how far this is going to really benefit the common mass. How many students? Now, what will the language be for this examination? How will that be conducted? So, all these are again, going to, we have to rethink about it. We'll have to see how we can mold and make it proper for the Indian scenario. Because, see, we always have to remember this, the policies are made with certain good intentions, but it is the way we implement it that makes it a good policy or a bad policy. So the implementation part, the practical part of it is very important. Now, coming to the 4-year multidisciplinary bachelor's program, we have already started with the CBCs, and with the restricted space in the colleges, with the restricted resources of teacher and time, uh, I believe this is theoretically a very good idea of having multidisciplinary bachelor's program. But I don't know how far we can really cope with it, or will it again become one of those where the proposal is something and in practice we follow something. no affiliation, and because now the colleges, the degree colleges, they can have their own identity, they can have their own setup, they can have their own way of imparting education, and they won't have to seek permission from the universities. Now, again, maybe that is good to some extent, but what about the uniformity? What about the standard? For that, of course, there will be the, the agencies for going looking through these. But thinking of India, which is such a vast country with such diversity, I don't know how far we are going to really uh, improve qualitatively. Now, one thing that I would like to state over here, see, in uh, the physical sciences, the experiments are done in the labs, and you may be getting the results very, say, within a month, within a year, and you can, retry that and say, well, it has worked in that lab A, so it's going to work well in lab B. But in case of education, our labs are the schools, the colleges, the total education system of the country. So we'll have to wait and see after its implementation, say at least for 5 years, to see what the outcome is going to be like. And the proposal to cap the fee charged by private institutions, well, that is a very good proposal, but I hope it will not remain as a proposal, because we have had some bitter experiences in the medical field about this. So maybe the education field is going to respect this fee cap over here. And going local, that is global and local together. Again, the question is, uh, India itself is a global part. And if you look at the big global dimension, it is a big challenge, to be a part of the universe with multi languages, with giving emphasis on the local resources, the local culture. But I believe this is a very good way of looking at our country and rethinking about the gems that we have in this country. Well, yesterday, Sir did speak about this, about the Higher Education Commission of India, where they're going to merge the UGC and SCE NCTE. Only the medical and legal education, they are going to have a different commission. And there will be 4 independent verticals: the National Higher Education Regulatory Council for regulation, the General Education Council for standard setting, and Higher Education Grants for funding, and National Accreditation Council for accreditation. Now, again, I believe this is going to be a challenge for the ones who are going to practice education, the authority, the college authorities, the higher education institutes. If we have a regulatory council for regulation and then another for standard setting, and if there is a conflict between the two, whom do we cater to? Anyway, let's hope for the best. Now, the single university entrance examination, as I was saying, like how how is that going to be taking place? Because if we look at the, I won't say the standards, I'll say the curriculum, it's diversified. And when you have one university entrance exam for the whole country, uh, let's hope for the best. Now, one thing which is really going to be very challenging is foreign universities coming in, because they are going to be given ample opportunities to set up in India. And India being a country which is a very good source of income for the foreign universities, and it's going to be a tough competition between the Indian universities and the foreign universities. Now, that is going to be, that may be good, with a healthy competition taking place between these two, and quality of education getting raised. And the purpose of having this is that the students, we won't be having an exodus of students from our country. They'll be getting their education right here itself. So if if that is catered to, it's well and good. And even there is the scope of having offshore campuses, that is, our country, our universities going abroad and setting up their own campuses out there. Mm. Well, I find there is a little bit of a conflict over here, but let's see what, uh, again, this is a challenge that we'll have to face. And multidisciplinary colleges in every district by 2030. Well, right now we do have multidisciplinary colleges in most of the districts, but it is being stressed that we should be having one in every district. And multidisciplinary undergraduate education, there will be a merging of science, commerce, and arts or humanities. Well, as most of us can see, that this is nothing but aping the West that is taking place. We are trying to take in the USA structure. But as far as my knowledge goes, like it is, education is like a pyramid, like initially you come learn so many things together, and slowly you go on becoming a master in one. And at the peak, you are more specialized. But let's see what the intention is like. And autonomy. Now, this is not something new, moving towards faculty and institutional autonomy. Theoretically, all the universities are supposed to be autonomous, but we all know, the sarcasm behind it. Like, how far can we really maintain our autonomy in this socio-political and economic condition? Uh, there is a good proposal where every college would develop into an autonomous degree granting college, uh, or a constituent college of a university. And being, see, right now, even the colleges are the constituent colleges, but right, what the proposal is that it is going to be like a department of the university. Again, uh, let's see. This is again a challenge that we'll have to think when the colleges start giving their own degrees. Now, who is going to look at the, like equivalence of the degrees? How is that going to be maintained? Maybe through the accreditation. And there, one good thing about is the colleges are going to have a chance to climb up the ladder from autonomous degree granting colleges to research intensive or teaching intensive universities if they so inspire. And so maybe that is going to help in spreading higher education. But again, the challenge is, will the quality remain the same? Or with quantity, the quality is going to have a nosedive. Now, emphasis has been laid on conceptual understanding, which is very, very important because we all know and we all can see how students are getting, people who can really rote learn score so high, but when it comes to implementing something in the real sense, they are having problems in it. So, creativity and critical thinking, ethics and human constitutional values, and life skills. See, again, this is very important in the present situation, in the present era, because post COVID, we'll have to rethink about our social, uh, about the job market, about the social atmosphere, about uplifting the economic condition of the country. So it's very important for us to have to develop the creativity and critical thinking of the students, and uh, the importance on assessment throughout instead of summative assessment, having formative assessment for learning. Now, again, this is a challenge because this is easier to do if we have a comparatively fewer number of students under the teachers. But right now, think of higher education, think of teachers, think of the vacancies, the seats lying vacant in the colleges, and how difficult it is for the teachers to cope with say, 150 students in a class or 200 students in a class, and how we are going to go through these formative assessment, whether it is at the school level or at the higher education level, uh, that has to be seen. And respect for diversity and respect for local context. Well, that should be there. So, uh, though the structure of education doesn't really reflect it, it is more respect for other cultures, but maybe we'll have to, fit it into our own culture and accept it and move on. and of course equity and inclusion. But one thing sadly out here is, when we are talking of inclusion, we are talking of special education, not much has been stated about it. So again, rethinking is required. After all these, everything is well said, but who is going to do it? Doing it is the greatest challenge. And for that, I believe we need to change our attitude and outlook. We are so used to the kind of experiences that we have been having. So right now, the main part is changing the attitude individually, and also a change in the attitude of the administration. So administrative level attitudinal change is very important. So that is a challenge right now, or else I'm sure that we will not be able to cope up with the new, uh, this new times and the new educational policy. Well, thank you. And if there is any question,
Thank you, ma'am. If there is any question from the participant, you can share with us. Hello. Hello.
no questions.
No questions.
So what Arindam said, maybe that's true.
Yes, I actually have seen that there are more than 100 participants, and
Yeah, yeah.
everybody very carefully listens the nice presentations by ma'am.
Thank you.
I especially request all the participants, if you have any questions, if you have any ideas that you would like to share with us, please ask.
There is one question from Ruma Malik, I can see. DLED
Yes,
ট্রেনিং
ma'am.
কোর্স কি আর থাকবে না? Well, কিছু সত্যিকারের ওটা নিয়ে বলা হয়নি, because teacher education is going to go through a revamping totally. And they are talking about the 4-year attachment with the degree colleges and 2 years. So we are not very sure what's going to happen. We still have to wait and see. What is the simple challenge that we have to take then to accept the new education policy? I believe the first and foremost thing is to challenge our own thought process. We have to accept the fact that change is going to come. Change is inevitable. So we need to, go on trying with new things and experiment with it. So that will be the only way. Let's try it out. That spirit has to be there.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any question? Ma'am, one question arise in the chat box.
Yes. What is going to be the position of English language under the policy? See, since this is, they're talking about the multilingual system, English language will be, it's going to have its own place as it has been. And that is what my question is, that is a challenge. We are so used to uh, the English being a international language, and we are still aping, like, we always keep thinking that if we learn English, it's going to be helpful for us globally. I'm sure English is not going to lose its dignity in any form. What about reservations? We have to wait and see. No idea. In the new policy, is the new policy starts from now for the new session of college? Again, we are not very sure about it. We'll have to wait, because right now, as I said, socially and economically, we are not in a position to know. Madam NEP 20 recommends universalization of school education for 3 to 18 years, but it is totally absent on the extension of the right of education of free. Yes, how the universal school education will be achieved? That is what I said, like the policies come up with some objectives. uh, without maybe really going into how it can be implemented. So, we'll just have to wait and see how that is going to be done, because it's true that universalization of education, we are talking about it over the last, say, 20 years. But how far have we managed with it? Let's see. What, according to you, should be the medium of instruction at elementary level? Right now, Dr. Bose said, he has learned so many languages together because he had learned it from the childhood. He had this exposure to so many languages. And even right now, if you look at, the children who don't have Bangla as mother tongue, but who are being reared up over here, they have learned the languages. But a person who is coming for some job at a, say, later age, he has difficulty in learning a language. So I believe, see, mother tongue is always the best language, no doubt. But I am a supporter of multilingual teaching, because it is important for children to learn as many languages as possible, especially in a country like India. What challenges we may face for NEP in modern era? I believe I have been talking about the challenges right now. So all these are challenges, because we have to rethink about our education system when you are opening up so many things, when you're changing the evaluation system. uh, See, changing from one to the other itself is a big challenge, because you have to reframe the whole thing. It's like remodeling a house totally. An old house, the structure is there and you have to remodel it. So it's time consuming a little bit, but we have to do it. How we overcome, ma'am? What do you want to overcome? I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
I think that was in
uh,
continuation with the previous question. Same person asked about the challenges of
okay.
NEP. He's saying, how can you
Uh-huh.
overcome those challenges? I think you have covered that
uh,
in your presentation.
yes,
Yes,
I
yes.
think so. Okay, how do we introduce a new experiment in rural institution? Uh, the whole country will be changing. So it's not just going to be in the urban areas, it's going to be in the rural areas too. So the experimentation will take place all over India.
Can I answer also
Yes,
this
yes, sure,
question?
sure, 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 sure.
I will give you an example of Hoshangabad science teaching program. When so there was people science movement in 60s. Well, it started with some professors and scientists from TIFR, some professors from Delhi University, and they were so the science, it was people science movement in few places in Madhya Pradesh. Present day Piparia. If these places like, near Itarsi. Hoshangabad and so on. So Hoshangabad Science Teaching Program, as it was called, it also produced many books, many textbooks, which were followed by Madhya Pradesh State Board for 30 years, 1972 to 2002. All right. So the point that I'm trying to make here is, when the scientists from Delhi University and TIFR and other places were actually, they made a base camp near Piparia and Gadarwara. Though there are many places, many villages in Hoshangabad district, and they were thinking of how to use people's knowledge about science in the textbook. And I will give you an example of lens. When they were discussing about lens, how to introduce lens at grade 3 or grade 4, one young girl who was in grade 1 then, he was bringing tea, চা এনে দিচ্ছিল একটা ট্রেতে করে.
Mm.
She overheard लेंस कैसे बताएं, लेंस के लिए लोकल एग्जाम्पल क्या होंगे, so she overheard. ওইটুকু বাচ্চা 5 বছর 6 বছরের মেয়ে, she quickly ran away and she brought a huge leaf which is similar to those you get in Purulia and that area, যাতে করে ঠোঙা বানানো হয় একটা গাছের পাতা, আমি আমার নাম মনে নেই.
শাল পাতা।
হ্যাঁ, অনেকটা ইয়ে থাকে, there's a quote of
শালপাতা,
something, শালপাতাই হতে পারে, এত শালপাতা, বাট তাতে জল থেকে যায়, জলের ফোঁটা, droplet of water sticks on it. She brought, it was a rainy season, she brought that leaf with one droplet of water on it, and she brought and she says, "ये lens है sir, क्योंकि इससे वो दिखता है." Imagine
My God.
a girl of 5 years or 6 years, she saw that water droplet, when it's convex, really round in
Mm.
shape, actually works as a lens. Of course, it won't be a magnifying lens, but at least you can see some of those,
Mm.
stems and so on of the leaf.
Color that is like a pretty color.
Yeah. So these are some of the things. So, and if you talk about experiments in rural institution, I believe there are already many experiments or many knowledge set up as part of funds of knowledge community practice, which we should learn about. From rural setting, there are plenty of such examples. We should come and it should be used.
Very true. Very true. No more questions. Dropout is a challenge. Now NEP will reduce it. Well, it's going to try to. It's very difficult to say whether it will be able to or not. But all these policies, they try to do it with an intention. But let's be hopeful. We are not very sure whether it will be able to reduce it or not. Because it's not just the kind of education that is important. Think of the practices also, how we teach. Why do the students drop out? One is definitely the economic condition of the family, but even the teaching learning process is important. If it is not linked to their life, they don't enjoy it. They don't feel like coming to classes. And if it has nothing to do with their later earning, why will they continue with it? How will the system of PhD program be changed? Uh, did it say something about PhD, new education policy? They have done away with MPhil, but PhD program will be as it is. Nothing has been said as far as I know. Arindam, have they told anything about PhD?
No, it's not clear. In fact, there are many things which are not clear. In fact, I feel there is an attempt to keep things in garb and also keep visibility of interpretations. As of now, please don't worry. There is nothing, no change because it's not being implemented. It's only a policy. You see, from policy, there are other rules and regulations which will emerge. So nothing is going to happen, at least in the coming academic year. So don't have to worry.
Thank you, ma'am, for being us. Now, I call my principal, sir, to say hello. Hello, sir.
Hello. Hello, madam, and Professor Arindam Bose, sir. Very thanks thanks both to you being here as a resource persons, presented very nicely your concept about new education policies and challenges. Sir, আমাদের এই কলেজ আপনাদেরকে ফিজিক্যালি চাই। আপনারা এই প্যান্ডেমিক মানে প্যান্ডেমিক যে সিচুয়েশন এটা কেটে যাক। আফটার দ্যাট if you have some time, then come here. Very nice place, very good ambience. Students are very needy. They want to learn, but the resource is very limiting. Whatever we trying actually our level best, but we are trying step by step to increase our everything, from supporting system to structures, everything. Thank you all, sir. Thank you, madam, being with us. আমি সোমনাথকে বলবো, সোমনাথ যদি আমাদের স্যারদের বলার জন্য সুপ্রিয় যদি কিছু বলে একটু বলতে বলো। হ্যালো
Hello, Supriyo. I, on the behalf of Sabang Sajanikanta Mahavidyalaya, and the entire Department of Education and Department of Philosophy here together, and on my own behalf extend every heartful vote of thanks all the speaker for gracing your important speech and sharing with us. A big thanks you, Muhammad Fazal Rahman Khan, for his wonderful lecture. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for the Professor Ashish Srivastav for his explanation of National Education Policy to 2020, implementation strategies and challenges. I may like to express our sincere thanks to Dr. Auridya Bose sir for giving us a excellent coverage to lecture. I also wish to express my gratitude to Professor Debussy Banerjee for providing encouragement of education in modern era. Thank you, sir, ma'am, or of you. Finally, I would like to thank, take opportunity to place and record our heartiest thanks to our principal, sir, Dr. Tapan Kumar Dotto, and Dr. Selim Chisti, Associate Professor in Economics, Coordinator of IQAC, Dr. Pinky Das, Organizer Secretary, Assistant Professor in Philosophy, Mr. Supriyo Konai, Organization Secretary, Assistant Professor in Philosophy, Department of Philosophy, Mr. Mithu Jana, Mr. Gaur Hori Sinha, Department of Philosophy, Nolini Kanto Mitro, Dr. Krishna Prasad Bor, Mauparna Sahu, and Prosenjit Jana. Once again, I want to state that we are all much grateful to you, all the speaker on this webinar. We thank you for being with us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somnath,
Yes, sir.
before leaving, I want to say something about our participants. That our system of certificate about the generation or productions of or receiving our certificate. This certificate will be issued automatically after the login through the process, as mentioned earlier. After half an hour, it will be ready for auto generations from system. Okay.
স্যার আমি কিছু বলে মানে কিভাবে কি করতে হবে বলে দিচ্ছি. We would like to inform our participant that they can download this webinar e-certificate from our website. When you click on the download button for this e-certificate, you will receive a feedback from any. You will be able to download the certificate as soon as you submit the feedback form.
It will be ready after half an hour or 1 hour.
Half an hour.
Within 1 hour, it will be ready. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you, madam. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Thank you. Namaskar.
No, sir.
Supriyo.
আচ্ছা আমাদের সোমনাথ,
হ্যাঁ স্যার,
আমাদের এটা ইউটিউব হয়েছে?
হ্যাঁ ইউটিউবে স্ট্রিমিং হয়েছে।
এটা ইউটিউবটা হলে আগের দিনেরটা আর আজকেরটা তোমরা একটু পাঠাবে তো, ওটাকে দেখে আমি একটু দেখবো। আমার এখান থেকে সম্ভব হয়নি, আমার মনে হয় সুপ্রিয় করেছে, সুপ্রিয় এটাকে রেকর্ড